Welcome to Cinema Chop Shop. Watch, chop, retrofit.
I got sideswiped today.
Did you?
Yeah.
What happened?
An elderly lady just pulled out and drifted right over into the side door of my minivan as I was leaving the gym today.
And then he met me to play pickleball, and I have not played pickleball except one time a couple years ago with you, and I beat him.
I'm not going to say that I let Todd
in
win
3
today,
sets,
but let's say
yeah.
I was trying to introduce him to the game and not trying to scare him off. So.
But this isn't the Stages of Geriatric Life podcast. It's Cinema Chop Shop. It's a movie podcast where we talk about movies and such. And today's a very special day because it's an episode that we wanted to talk about for quite some time, and it's finally here. I'm your host, Sean, and I'm joined by my usual guest, Joey Poole.
Howdy, neighbors.
And Todd.
How are you doing?
And Travis took a break this week to make room for our very special guest, Brandon Goff.
Hello, all.
Brandon is a bit of an expert in the field that we're talking about today, even though he doesn't want us to call him such, but he's got more knowledge than we do. He comes from the music field, and Brandon is the composer of the Cinema Chop Shop theme song. So the music you hear coming and going out of this show, Brandon did
I
for
did
us.
not know that.
Definitely
kindly.
qualifies you as an expert.
I had long forgot about that.
Yeah, you even
that must
forgot
have been
to
some
see,
years back.
This is how good he is. He doesn't even remember. It's just like
He
throwaway.
tossed
Yeah,
it
you
off,
know.
Yeah, I had long forgot about that.
So welcome to the show, Brandon. We appreciate you sitting in and offering some credibility to these proceedings. The episode today, we're talking about Synth Soundtracks. Joey talked about this several months ago to me, and I was on board for it 100%. I love Synth Soundtracks. The day's here. We're going to talk about some very well-known ones that cover the early 80s, I guess, would probably be accurate, yes. But there was a resurgence of popularity among synth sounds as well in the 2010s, 2011s,
Yep.
which I'll hit one of those points as well. Before it became popular in the early 80s, though, we had a lot of synth sounds, like Clockwork Orange, I think, was the first really, the one that was not a horror film or sci-fi film, getting across those eerie sounds that you associate with sci-fi and horror. So Clockwork kind of brought that into the forefront as a viable option for scores. And then you begin to see it start to take shape and form in the late 70s and early 80s. John Carpenter, with his horror films, kind of doing his own thing, very much bootstrapping his own music. But then you've got other artists like Tangerine Dream, which we'll talk about, Goblin with Dario Argento.
I wonder how much of this was driven by economic concerns, because it just struck me when you said
100%.
that.
100%. I was going to say
Absolutely.
the same thing.
That was one thing is you're transitioning from orchestra to electronic. You get the wall of sound without having to bring in a shit ton of people.
Right.
A couple of guys with synthesizers, room-size synthesizers.
You don't even need a real
Yeah.
drummer, as I'll
And
talk
you
about with mine.
Don't have to pay an entire orchestra. Yeah.
Totally. And with any kind of technology, you have advancements, and Brandon, you can speak to this, I'm sure, where advancements in technology, it goes way beyond just a keyboard making the little dinging synth that we associate with a Roland type keyboard or a Moog kind of thing.
Yeah.
Then you start introducing replacements for strings and percussion and whatnot through electronic mediums. That definitely would be an economic factor.
That's how everything's done now. In fact, I found that fascinating because, well, I know in that field, it's so often that the technology accessible to you is what drives the way you compose the music. So you're not just using a musical language. The technology will change the language you have accessible to you.
Are you saying that when we hear, in the 21st century, when we hear new films and it sounds like real orchestral scores, often it's like...
It's almost always primarily...
version of
In fact, I thought this when you asked this question. You said synth soundtracks. Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, well, they're all synth soundtracks. Everything's either sampled or synthesized. A synthesizer uses oscillators to create the tones, but modern soundtracks are just samples of someone playing a real thing and then processed in a computer because it's so quick, so efficient. You can record one violinist, add 45 fake violinists, and it sounds like an orchestra.
Yeah, and you have, like in the late 90s, when Radiohead started putting out and they weren't the first, but the laptop stuff where they could, put in, it sounds like they've got, this choir of women, and it's just stuff that they're...
Sounds like we're talking about AI in a way. It's like, now you can do this and you can do that, and now it's taking over. So we're going to blame AI on synth. That's the underlying message of this episode.
Trace it all back to the abacus.
How dare you add quickly?
So I mentioned John Carpenter. I mentioned Tangerine Dream. Giorgio Moroder being the one from Midnight Express, which won the Oscar.
And the Never-Ending Story,
Best
which is
a Never-Ending Story.
another
Oh,
banger
yeah.
soundtrack. Yeah.
Totally.
So good.
That's then Vangelis, of course, with Blade Runner, but the one that I think got him the attention was Chariots of Fire, which, as I pointed out, is just a slowed down version of On Top of Spaghetti.
Spaghetti.
I actually saw that movie for the first time just a few months ago.
But yes, we saw a resurgence with shows like Stranger Things, the movie It Follows.
Yeah, that was one that I
That's
thought
one
of.
where
Yeah.
it definitely brought it in, and the one I'll talk about later, Drive. And that was kind of shaped from nostalgia in terms of what we're talking about today with the episode. You know, as Brandon explained, everything is kind of synth now because it's just easier to access a multitude of instruments without the expense. But we're speaking directly to that synth sound that we put in air quotes that speaks to that early 80s kind of sound that kind of hits you in the nostalgia feels, which is, I think, largely one of the reasons why it saw that popularity surge in the 2010s, 2011 era. And then, of course, as you mentioned, cost. It's an easier way to get that kind of big sound without having to bring in a whole London Symphony Orchestra kind of thing like they would do back in the day. So, that's the episode we're going to be discussing. Which brings us to our feature segment. We're going to be talking about a film that I quite like, and it is called Thief from 1981. This is Michael Mann's debut feature film.
The first of two Mans we'll do today, which
Yes,
I don't think was by design, but
It's a pretty ballsy statement for a first debut film.
Absolutely. Low key. I mean, you've got 10 minutes of film with very little dialogue. Which,
fascinating.
What really kind of sets the stage for this is a synth soundtrack kind of movie because Tangerine Dream does all the talking for the first 10 minutes of the film. I mean, that's what you're listening to. You don't hear any dialogue. And it stars James Caan, by the way, as the character Frank, a professional thief. His love interest, Jesse, played by Tuesday Weld. Leo, played by Robert Prosky. Willie Nelson's in this. Only 2 scenes, but it makes a huge movie.
He's great.
A huge impact in the movie. Okla is his character. Jim Belushi plays his James Caan's assistant, Barry.
yeah.
Kind of a communications expert.
Right.
And then Dennis Farina, in his film debut, plays the character Carl. So a brief synopsis for anybody who has not seen it. Frank's a high-stakes professional jewel thief in Chicago who operates with mechanical precision and a strict code of detachment built on a philosophy of self-reliance that he developed during a long prison sentence. After a successful diamond heist is complicated by the death of his fence, Frank is cornered into working for Leo, a high-level mob boss who offers him one final massive score that could provide the financial security Frank needs to build a normal life with his new girlfriend, Jessie.
Robert Prosky, by the way, for the Leo character, right?
Yeah. He's great.
And he's one of those guys, kind of like Morgan Freeman, who didn't really start having a notable career until he was pretty old already.
Yep.
Yeah. In his 50s.
So, however, as the mob's demands escalate and Frank realizes that his dreams of a domestic future shattered, forcing him to systematically destroy everything he owns and loves to reclaim his freedom. This movie always reminds me of Les Samurai, which we talked about in our Samurai Movies episode.
He's not as stoic, but definitely has that kind of same like code and that.
And he doesn't have the loner
detachment
thing like he does want
Yep.
a family and stuff, whereas the DeLong character, is just kind of
and it ends up being his undoing too. Like
Right.
yeah.
So let's kind of talk about the music. Tangerine Dream, obviously a pretty well-known ambient group, German, yes, I believe,
Yep,
right?
German.
And so they had their own music chops in their own right, but I think Michael Mann sought them out for this because he really wanted them to do the talking. There are times when Frank doesn't say anything, as we mentioned, and the music is his dialogue throughout the film. And then there are parts when Frank is talking, there is no music whatsoever. The score just drops completely out. They do a lot of heavy lifting in this movie.
Yep. And this was, I think, their 15th album, like when this came out. So they were already, grizzled veterans at this point. when they did this film.
Yeah, well established. What I think is interesting is that you mentioned this. I mean, you mentioned earlier how it's often a financial reason. I suspect that's why John Carpenter would do his own scores, because these are relatively low budget horror films. I'll do it myself. You have total control and it's cheap. But Michael Mann,
DIY is off the budget.
Exactly. But Michael Mann was a huge fan of European cinema and a huge fan of European pop. This was an aesthetic choice, not a financial choice. Bringing in Tangerine Dream was someone saying, "Hey, I want this vibe, not that this is what I can afford."
Yeah.
I mean, I think that says something about the overall final product quite a bit.
Yeah. And when he got bigger budgets, it's notable because this was his first film. He didn't have a huge budget for this one, but then when he got bigger budgets, he still kind of stuck with that aesthetic, like Manhunter and stuff like that.
Yeah, always.
Yeah.
For me, there are two ways that a movie score can be really, really good. One way is that you never even think about it. You don't even have a conscious thought about it because it's just perfect and it just underscores and everything and gives you subtle cues about how to read things emotionally, and you don't really have a conscious thought about it. The other way is when it like reaches out through the speakers and like
It's a character.
grabs you by that side of the
Yeah.
head. And this one is that. This would have been a much different movie with a much different score. And there's two scenes in particular. Sean, you alluded to the first one. There's like a long shot of like nightscapes in the city, interspersed with like this kind of sparks flying, technical safe cracking montage basically, and that really just eerie, low key synthy score at the beginning tells you how to see this, and like it makes it something that it's not. And at the very end, in the climax, if you go back and you watch that scene without the score, it's not, I mean, it's good filmmaking. He knows what he's doing. It's very competent. But it's nothing that is really all that quote-unquote cinematic. But even in terms of what's happening in that scene, he's gotten a bit of revenge, and he's walking off down the sidewalk into, the rest of his life, which isn't going to last long. But that, like, soaring, like, Pink Floyd-esque, like, proggy space rock thing just renders it so epic.
And
it does.
And I thought about a film that's similarly has a safe cracking element that we've talked about before, the Anderson tapes with Sean Connery, that I don't think comes off as well, even though it has cool visuals of that element. But the music, I think, can't be separated from what is achieved in Thief in terms of like its resonance, and whereas the Anderson tapes, it doesn't quite achieve that.
Well, Michael Mann famously told Tangerine Dream that he wanted the music to be, quote, loud, like a drilling noise in the brain.
Wow.
The score uses heavy sequencer rhythms and metallic guitar textures to mimic that industrial tool that Frank's using to kind of blur that line between sound effects and music. So that was really well done. And like as you said, Joey, that drilling sequence at the beginning, they really, really hit that hard and totally communicate what he was going for.
And that's a good example of what Brandon was talking about earlier, like not just using the synth to recreate an orchestral score, because it can do things that you're taking advantage of the then nascent technology. It can do things that the orchestra can't, and like provide these kind of like squishy and metallic sort of like which are somewhere between between like just textural sound and a score somewhere too. So.
Yeah, it blends. They were historically used for like space age sound effects. So I mean, obviously, as it becomes like the full score, you can blend sound design with your score. I love that closing scene of Thief, because it is the first time that whole. This took me back when we got there, because it almost sounded like a proper rock ensemble with like almost like kind of pseudo guitar solos that were all synthesizers, of course. But it was the first time we had jumped into that kind of feel, and I thought, oh, what a way to save the money right there. Right there is when you start. That's when you make that.
You want to hear something wild? Michael Mann chose Tangerine Dream specifically because he wanted an un-American sound. He originally was planning on using Chicago blues as the soundtrack for this movie.
I was going to mention that there's you mentioned that there's long stretches in this movie where there's no sound at all. And two things. One of the most effective ones of those is when the James Caan's character kind of gets his comeuppance, and the mob boss just stands over him, and he does that thing where he's looking up and he turns around and the camera is looking at him upside down, and he delivers this monologue just in your face, and it's just Khan's character is just in just an abject state of helplessness,
Oh.
and it's kind of terrifying. And there's no sound at all. But you mentioned the Chicago blues thing. There's a scene in the bar. And when I was watching it, it was jarring because, like, you're used to hearing the music is like this very, metallic, sort of like cold, industrial, synthy sound, and then you hear this very organic, like, rhythm and blues, and it was almost like jarring you back into a different
I think that's
vibe.
one thing that's it's important in any movie, but particularly in a synth film, is the management of silence versus when the music comes in. Because when the music comes in, it's so it's just like it's not going to be in the background. When the music comes in, it's going to be in your face, and so there's a management of that sound that has to go into the thinking behind it, and you kind of referenced that, which was something I noticed too.
And the integration of human timbres throws you off. I was the same way. As soon as I heard the blues group playing at the bar, I was like, it completely. I was like,
kind of takes you out of this
I was like, where am
environment.
I again? I had forgotten I was in Chicago at that point because I'm so used to like man's L.A. passion. I was like, we're back in Mississippi. We're back in like the old. Yeah, that's where we are.
And it's kind of neat because it pulls you out of this world that Frank lives in, the Tangerine Dream world of his professionalism, his cold, locked down, got to get the job done, and then you are completely pulled out of it when you come up for air, so to speak. So it's a really interesting touch. This movie was nominated for a Razzie.
Yeah,
for the worst musical score.
Yeah, I was going to mention that.
I didn't know that.
It's amazing.
Wrong.
Well,
that's
that's
wrong
something
thinking.
else.
I mean,
It hasn't aged well for the Razzie folks.
There
should be a Razzie for the Razzie.
Yeah, exactly. It's just funny how a movie like this comes out and they just don't know what to think or do with it because it's unlike a lot of things that are out there. So
right.
that kind of. But you mentioned the big climactic scene with the big sweeping guitar solos and kind of thing. So what happened in this? In the final shootout, Michael Mann wanted Pink Floyd's "Comfortably Numb" to be that song, and they couldn't get the rights for it. And Tangerine Dream was on tour, so they couldn't record a new track. So this is like the one non-Tangerine Dream track. It was composed by Craig Saffin, and he asked him to write. It's called "Confrontation." It's a track that's designed specifically to sound like a lawsuit-proof version of "Comfortably Numb."
Okay, I should have looked that up because that's what I was thinking. I was like, what is this?
I mean, it is got every single tonal shift in that, in that track.
It even, and you said it's a synth thing, but it even sounds like a Roger Waters tone, kind of.
That was clearly what was asked of the composer.
No, I mean David Gilmour. I mean the guitar tone, but I guess it's a synth.
Yeah, of course, that makes perfect sense. Because I was thinking, because I was rewatching it yesterday, I was thinking, that's I'm sure Tangerine Dream was like, what do you want out of this? They were confused.
So
with
they
that
weren't
direction.
even around for this.
It
They
wasn't
were
even
on
them.
other things.
That makes perfect sense.
Interesting how well it fits in with the. As you said earlier, it's not really all that similar to the other stuff, but it sounds
like it.
of a piece. You know,
Yeah.
Let's see. These are my Travis Allen fun facts. The track Igneous on the soundtrack is actually a remix of a piece called Through Metamorphic Rocks from Tangerine Dream's 1979 album Force Majeure. And Michael Mann was so hands-on that he actually flew to Berlin and sat at the mixing board with the band. Edgar Froese later joked that film producers know as much about music as I do about 35mm cameras, but Mann's obsession with the texture of the sound is what makes the movie so unique.
Twiddle that one again.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's a interview with one of Tangerine Dream's former band members on the Blu-ray disc for Thief from Criterion, and he said that it was just like he was into it. Like he flew out. He knew that he was not versed in it, but he knew what he wanted, and so it was really helpful to kind of hear that from him firsthand. So as they were mixing things, that Michael Mann would bring things up that he wanted to hear and bring things down that he didn't, and so I can imagine that that's probably what I'm like when I get into that role with professional musicians at my profession. I love this movie. I think it's great. It's just so low-key and so odd for its time.
Well, and one other thing that I would add about what the soundtrack adds as almost sort of a character of sorts is it almost becomes hyper-reality. Like, it's something that could theoretically happen, but at some point there's like a little bit of surrealism that comes in, particularly at the end, like when he just just is able to like kill everybody like some sort of samurai type character. You know, there's just this.
But literally
this
burns down his whole
yeah.
life.
Yeah.
Exactly. There's just this sort of heightened sense of the reality that goes beyond actual reality. I guess hyper reality is the word for that. But yeah, so I think it lends itself to that in a way that if they had actually gotten comfortably numb, like I was trying to briefly picture, like hear that, I was like, that wouldn't work as well.
Well, it's
you know?
odd too because The Wall came out just 2 years prior,
Right.
So it just wouldn't
Yeah.
have worked.
Yeah.
But it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and people
that-
would have had their own, you would have had your own association.
Yeah,
with it,
yeah.
right?
They're like, what the fuck is this shit?
Right.
See Thief if you've not seen it. It's a cool movie, and Michael Mann's to be the start of his catalog. I mean, that's a big entrance.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of his best films, I would say.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's
Certainly
definitely
in the top three, probably.
kind of has that cool factor. Like you, Brandon mentioned that LA vibe that was so often associated with him.
And maybe the lower budget actually reined in his excess a little bit, whereas in some movies that were still good movies, he was able to indulge himself a little more in
Right.
ways that maybe weren't helpful.
Yeah, I like it because it's other than the bombastic nature of what's actually happening. It is a
Right.
quiet film.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, yeah, when it's like that, you have to rely on the writing and acting chops of like James Caan. I mean, you have to rely on the cast,
Yeah.
which are stellar. I mean,
Yeah.
Caan is never off, but he's not off at all. He is just he's the original Tony Soprano, and he's kind of a clown in public because he's not an educated guy, but he's trying to make his way the best he knows how.
And he has those hardcore principles. And
Yeah.
when someone tries to get him to violate it, he's, you know, you believe that don't push him too far.
But his
Although
undoing,
he does break it. He breaks it though at one point.
and I love that his
Yeah.
undoing is that his inability to live in the real world and not that world
Yeah.
that he's created for himself. Because, you know, he had a pretty sweet deal with the mobster guy. I can't remember the name of the film. And frankly, not. I mean, so basically what happens is he thinks that this mobster has shorted him, and the mobster says, "Oh, basically, no, I gave you $800,000 of it in cash. The rest of it, I'm basically buying you into like this criminal enterprise." And Khan's, you know, that's how that shit works. You know what I mean? And he can't ever accept that he is.
That's a common theme though in movies like this, as we'll see in Drive later on.
Yeah,
That becomes
he's a solo operator.
Yeah.
And he ends up getting his revenge, but he also ends up
Burning every bridge,
ostensibly
literally.
dying too,
Yeah.
for sure.
Because in like modern financial parlance, you would, if someone handed me that deal, like, this is going to pay points forever. This is this is even better than cash.
Oh, I'm in the
getting
mob
stock.
now?
I'm getting
Okay.
stock
Yeah,
options.
Yeah.
Like, thank you.
I was like, wow, you're the best
The
ever.
retirement plan and
Right.
shit, yeah.
It's amazing. At the time, he's like, this is no good. And I'm thinking,
He's like, and even before that, well, what if I get picked up? What if I get busted? Oh, my lawyers will be there. You won't even spend the night in jail. You know? So I mean, yeah.
he's the sweetest
He's
deal
just
possible.
dedicated to that
Yeah, and he fucks with
loner
the cops too. I
outsider.
forgot about that. He kind of fucks with the cops a bit.
He
who
yields
are
to
in
no
on the deal,
one.
You know, just give us a few points of the hundreds of thousands of dollars you're going to be making. And
Yep.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah.
You're not going to get arrested. You're
Fascinating.
not going to get busted.
All right, that's Thief. So we're going to take a break, and we'll come back and discuss our individual picks, but not before we say, let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby and get ourselves a tangerine dreamsicle.
Yum, yum. It's time for a tasty and refreshing snack. We promise to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, your sweet tooth. So visit our refreshment center now. Let's go.
And we're back. We took a quick break, and now we're ready to resume. And beers-
Nobody peed in the yard.
I did.
Oh, okay.
Me
I was
too.
good. Yeah.
You weren't paying any attention.
Has there ever been an episode where no one
I
peed
don't
in the
think so.
yard in the?
No one told me it was an option.
It is an
Oh,
option.
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Go
We
right
can hit pause if you need to.
I would have jumped right on it.
All right, so we're going to continue with our individual picks. Joey, you're going to lead things off with The Keep.
I am, and as I have left my notes at my house across town, I will be raw dogging it this time, but I think I'm barely prepared. This is a 1983 Michael Mann feature. I didn't realize until you said earlier that Thief was his debut picture, just a few years ahead of this. So this would have been his second or third movie, I'm assuming. 1983, The Keep. I'm fascinated by this movie. I first saw it about 4 or 5 years ago. And it's not a great horror film, but it is a really singular one, I think, for a lot of reasons. And Brandon said earlier that this is one of those movies. I think everybody has these movies where you saw a horror movie at a tender young age before you should have probably been exposed to such things, and it stuck with you for whatever reason. This was your movie. That was
Freaked me out.
There's some really creepy imagery in here, which I think would have stayed with me as well. So The Keep, it follows a German regiment in early World War I. I think it's 1941. And they roll up into Romania at the beginning of the film. They're coming through this very narrow-looking pass through the mountains, which puts me in the mind of Werner Herzog's Aguirre, almost. In the ruggedness of the sort of remote place where they're at. And they roll up into this town in which there is the Keep, which is essentially a huge stone fortress built into the side of a mountain that has all this kind of lore surrounding it. They go inside. They're gonna camp. They basically are gonna set up bivouac there, and I guess use the Keep as a place to store munitions and whatnot. It's being guarded by a sort of mystical old man. And his family, passed down generationally to guard the Keep. And there's a series of crosses built into the wall, which are allegedly made of nickel, but some of the soldiers think they're made of silver. One of the German soldiers on a night shift decides to loot one of the crosses in the wall after explicitly being told not to touch them. And this happens in every folk horror movie ever. Somebody who's from that place and knows what the fuck's going on is like, hey, have fun out there, but whatever you do, don't, stand under the full moon and yell Bloody Mary 3 times or whatever. This guy says, do not touch the crosses. Lo and behold, they try to loot the crosses. When one of them starts glowing gold, and they inadvertently, as one does, unleash a demonic force upon the village, which has been trapped for thousands of years by this.
I hate it when that happens.
Yeah. So, this is the kind of film that we have. Much like Thief, this one is rendered into a much different movie by Tangerine Dream's score, which is a little bit more understated in this one, I think, but still kind of weird and grating. This is a great movie. Todd, in your Letterboxd review, you mentioned that it reminded you of Lucio Fulci.
Yes. So Michael Mann's oeuvre is more, like things like Thief, Manhunter. Later on, like something like Heat. This movie is way weirder and different, and I actually thought of The Beyond by Lucio Fulci when I was watching this film, including the soundtrack portion of it and the role that it played in it.
Like a lot of those all have real cheap sounding synth soundtracks too. There's Italian horrors. Like a lot of Italian horror, this one is very expressionistic. I like to think of it kind of as an expressionistic nightmare / creature feature. Yeah. And there's a 2-hour-long director's cut of this film, which I haven't seen, and as far as I know, hasn't been released. But as it is, it's 93 minutes long-ish, and it rambles a bit, and it doesn't really make a whole lot of narrative sense. It starts to put you in these interesting set pieces, and it establishes this very creepy vibe, but it doesn't make a whole lot of narrative sense. I would like to know what's on that other 40 minutes or so of film, because I think it may have actually made this a tighter story.
Well, I read that it was there was actually almost a 3-hour-long version. They said that one of the shortcomings of the edited version was that you lost so much of the actual narrative drive that actually I have not. I'm like you, have not seen the full version, but I was reading someone saying that like this longer version actually makes more sense. That the shortened version suffered from the lack of like narrative cohesion.
Yeah, you only get the very bare bones of a story kind of here, because you get like what's happening with this creature, which is named, and I had it written down in my notes, Radu something or whatever, just ancient evil.
Yeah.
But we don't really know exactly what starts happening, and I didn't really realize until the second watching that I did today that like this is also what's driving the townspeople also to kind of like have this kind of like mass hysteria event.
Well, and that was another thing that reminded me of Fulci and really Argento too. We'll talk about Italian horror films later. Is that they're less concerned about plot, tautness, we'll say, and more about the visual, the set pieces and what those convey to the audience. That's kind of more the vibe they're going for. And so that was another thing that I thought with The Keep was more in line with that sort of Italian cinema, more so than the other films that he's typically done.
Yeah, in this, I have the only real beef I have about this movie, other than it can be kind of disjointed, is that it starts out like this really kind of intense, allegorical sort of thing. The one of the Nazis basically asks the demon, what are you? And he says, well, I'm you. Mm-hmm. He's a reflection of human evil, basically. But then as the demon as he kills more people, he starts gaining more corporeal form, and he kind of morphs into like a dude in a rubber suit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, I mean,
there's a practical shortcoming of the movie,
and
unfortunately.
it's a cool rubber suit. But I don't know if I was like, maybe I was expecting a little bit more before that came. But again, I think that the score kind of makes it seem deeper and more ominous than maybe it really is. So.
Yeah.
Well, when I saw the listing of the movies you guys were discussing, so I went through and rewatched them all, and I hadn't seen The Keep since I was like 10, and the nightmares ensued. But at no point did I realize, like the older version of myself had no idea that was a Michael Mann film with a Tangerine Dream score. I had no idea. So I thought when I saw that on your list, I thought, oh my goodness, so I went back and watched it. And I have to say, I was like, it doesn't strike me as like...
That's not the same movie I saw.
And it struck me
all the time.
And it strikes me as kind of a one-off for my... It's like that was like him reaching for something else. And it was even... I always felt like the score was even kind of a reach. The score was... Because Tangerine Dream uses sequences. They use beats. They use patterns. And that struck me as a movie that didn't need like a... It didn't need... That didn't... It was... So it seemed like he was going for something he just wasn't quite. He's like he tried it once. Like
he was swinging for the fences.
Yeah.
He's like I'm gonna do horror sci-fi and
then he moved on pretty quick.
Yeah. I think he got back in his lane.
I think that's what I enjoy about the movie though, because I don't mind a movie that's flawed if the director is shooting for greatness.
Yeah.
And there's just warts and stuff.
Yeah, it's a fun movie. I've always enjoyed it.
There's an alternate universe where this pairing really, really worked for whatever reason, and like Heat is scored by Tangerine Dream.
Yeah. Now you do like a double feature of those two movies. Could you guess, not knowing in advance?
Yeah.
The same director did those.
Yeah, that's true. It is very much
I would not.
outside of his style.
Not have seen that.
Well, cool, JoJo. Thank you so much for bringing that one to the table. We're going to let Brandon go. This is his cherry popping moment. He's going to talk about his pick.
So I have chosen, the seminal work Blade Runner by director Ridley Scott. The year is 1982. I've noticed we've all chosen things from right around the 1981 to 1983 range. Clearly a heyday for synth scores. It was based loosely on the Philip K. Dick book, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? If you haven't read the book, it's actually a fantastic book. Yeah. I'm a huge fan of Philip K. Dick's writing. Again, it's something I saw as a child and understood almost none of. And I think I watched
there
it.
There are multiple versions of this movie.
Oh goodness, yes, yeah, absolutely. So, yeah. And I think I love films that, because I rewatched it twice for the past week, and even the second time on those rewatchings, I was like, oh, I think I'm getting it. Like it was still, it has legs. You know what I mean? It has depth. As do a lot of the great sci-fi writers that era as well. Scores by Vangelis, who's a Greek composer. I would read off his actual Greek name, but oh my goodness, it has 45 syllables, more than the entire text of the film. It's insane. Great composer. I mean, obviously well known for having won the Oscar for the Chariots of Fire. I particularly chose this movie because I love the way Vangelis approaches the score, and I can hash through that. And the plot of the film is imperative to the score. Vangelis, and he's known for this. He composes the movie. He doesn't compose music for the movie. He composes the movie. And if you watch the film, it's obviously about very apropos of modern day society. It's a bunch of replicants or essentially AI humanoids who are used as worker bees on another planet, but some have escaped back to Earth. And Deckard, played by Harrison Ford, is the guy who hunts them down. He's the hunter. Pretty simple plot, but actually a brilliant. It's the devil's in the details. Because as you watch the film, the only true human emotions that are displayed in the entire film are displayed by the humanoids, by the replicants.
Yep.
And that was such an intentional choice.
And, of course, that's one of the plot twists is that they don't necessarily know if they're a replicant or not.
Yes. And they're being implanted with memories. And so... like that was somewhat relevant when I was 10, right? I'm like, sure, yeah, that's deep. I get that.
So,
I just wanted another Star Wars movie to watch. What's up with this piece of shit?
It was when I was young, it was so dark. I was like, that's horrifying.
I still run into people who will argue that this is the most boring movie in the world and it sucks. And I'm like,
those people are wrong.
Yeah, you're
They're
wrong.
You don't
so
need to
wrong.
spend
You're
your
wrong.
time with them.
It's a sci-fi neo-noir movie with a really, as you mentioned, an end-to-end soundtrack that was scored for the entire film. There are no needle drops in this.
My gosh.
There's no shoehorn tracks. Everything is intentional.
And it has aged so. And I love the way Vangelis would approach his scoring. He would just watch a scene, and he's again. I say this all the time to my students. If you play me anything you've composed or written, I can tell you what your first instrument was, in a heartbeat. I can tell you that you started as a guitar player, you started as a drummer, you started as a pianist, because that first language is going to ring through. It's like an accent.
It kind of dictates your whole.
It is your default
language. Okay.
It is your vernacular. It is your musical default, and his is piano. And his is not sequencing. Tangerine Dreams is larger pop style sequencing. Vangelis is a pianist. He wants to just kind of play and orchestrate, but using synthetic timbres, and that really rings through because this is a proper film noir, and so he's constantly playing saxophone lines, these smoky saxophone lines on a synthesizer, and it drips through every scene. And I also love it's a film that it uses contrasting sonic and visual ideology. The first replicant that's killed is shot wildly in the streets, breaking through glass windows, and through that whole scene it's playing soft, low-key, like synth sax lines, like a futuristic bluesy bar, and that's unlike any modern Marvel film where they just over-enunciate whatever's happening on the screen. If it's a fight scene, you got fight music. It's a soft scene, you got soft music. It's the exact opposite.
Sean's pet peeve: the music telling you what to feel.
Yes, this is what. This is the movie you're watching, and this is what you are going to do next. Yeah.
And it's so nice when a composer sees beyond that, and a director lets a composer lean into that particular aesthetic. It's just so powerful.
It's perfect for a film set in the future because a saxophone that doesn't sound quite like a saxophone, but a saxophone in the future, that's perfect.
Again, I feel like that particular medium works so well, and he does use. Bear in mind, Vangelis is a Greek composer, and he was in a group. Oh, what were they?
Aphrodite's.
Children. Yes, and so like those high range vocals come from one of his bandmates from way back in that day, and it's again the best way to never sound dated is to write the future.
Yeah,
and that score writes the future. I mean, that's the same technique that was used in Gladiator. It's the same technique that was used in the modern sci-fi retelling of Battlestar Galactica. They use these kind of synth-heavy soundtracks with these kind of otherworldly, in this case, be it Turkish, Middle Eastern, or Greek melodic phrases that represent this kind of this interesting new world that we've yet to experience.
Yeah, it still feels fresh every time
And
I see that.
it is still fresh. You're exactly right. It is still fresh. Interesting tidbits for me, in my opinion at least, is that the score was incredibly popular right after the movie was released, and due to like a disagreement between Vangelis and the label, it wasn't released as a soundtrack at all.
Huh.
And so then they sold obviously the rights, the compositional rights, not the master rights, which are the recordings, and so they did like an orchestral retelling of this score, which didn't do well. And it wasn't until 2007, I think, that we got the first full release of the entire unabridged soundtrack.
Yeah.
And it was one of the best-selling soundtracks of all time. It's mind-boggling. It took that long, and it's still relevant.
So you're saying the music industry is a cutthroat business?
A little bit.
Well, it's kind of interesting now because we're conditioned to, if something gets popular, we know it immediately because it goes viral, and we know it immediately, and so the people that are going to make money off of it tap into it immediately. But with music and with films before that, we kind of forget that there were films, for example, that weren't that popular initially. Big Lebowski, for example, that then they have a second life on DVD.
Yep.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so that's something in the viral era that's kind of forgotten. Even now, there's stuff from like when Stranger Things did the Kate Bush song. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden that song has a second life, and it's a #1 single. And
That was her first #1 hit.
Yeah, right.
It's surreal.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And so it's just
Wow, I didn't
something
realize
that
that.
I think some of our younger listeners may not be able to understand.
We don't have younger listeners, Todd. Shut up.
Younger listener.
They're all old men like us.
They can't watch movies. They're 2 hours
They're
long.
too long.
God.
Jeez, give me a
That's
5-minute
actually,
video. Brandon, thank you so much for bringing us Blade Runner. I would have been sad if no one had brought it up. It's such a great movie, and no matter which version you're watching, no matter if it's the director's cut, the extended cut, the bloated
this
cut.
is a movie though where the different versions are pretty different.
Well, they are.
Cut this out if you need to, but the director's cut basically does the dream sequence thing, which makes it more clear that Decker is a replica.
He's replica.
right?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yep, and then the theatrical
It's-
release has the weird voiceover narrative that
Yeah.
Yep.
really feels like an old-fashioned private detective
Right,
story.
Exactly.
It's more like a noir.
So
But
It leans so hard in the
to
noir.
be honest with you, though, I enjoy
Yeah,
that
yeah.
one,
I mean,
too.
it's like it's really you get to
the
pick.
final cut, though,
you can,
is
you can pick
the
your
definitive
flavor.
version,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much, Brandon, for your debut on the show. You did great.
Thank you.
Todd, you're up, buddy.
All right, so we are going to stay in the same 3-year period as Brandon noted, with 1982's Tenebrae, which is from horror maestro Dario Argento, or also not just horror Giallo, which Giallo kind of goes.
Listen
into
to our
horror
Giallo
a little bit.
episodes,
Yeah.
please.
Right. So, yeah, anybody that has listened to many of our episodes knows I'm a fan of this genre. So Tenebrae is about an author, an American author who visits Rome for a book tour. He's stalked by a serial killer. The murderer uses violent methods, sometimes directly mimicking the plots in the novelist's latest novel. So we have this thing where, the things that happen, kind of like Basic Instinct or something, which I always wondered if, the Basic Instinct might be a little bit...
Little
based
derivative?
off-
Yeah.
little derivative
Yeah.
of Tenebrae. There's kind of a twist where there is an initial murderer, but then it kind of goes in a completely different direction. I'll have to give some spoiler plots eventually, but we'll kind of get into that. But basically, the soundtrack is technically not by goblins, but basically is. So the reason why it's not by goblins officially is because the drummer of the band had the rights to the name Goblin, and was not a part of what they did.
And
so,
Goblin worked with Dario Argento on a lot of
Correct.
stuff. There.
Argento
So-
was actually a member of the band, right?
Was he really?
I didn't know that.
Don't quote me on that before Todd gets.
Well, Argento was a musician. He may have contributed to some of the sound. Not in this one, as far as I was able to find in my.
I may be conflating that with
research.
John Carpenter we talked about earlier,
Could
doing
be.
his own scores.
Now, I will say that Argento was very involved in soundtracks in general. For example, the European cut of Dawn of the Dead, he recut with Goblin at doing the soundtrack of that, which is an interesting cut to watch because he completely cuts out all the humor. All the satire and humor is cut out of that version of the soundtrack because the European audiences, they just didn't think that would be appealing to them. So if you ever see the European or have a chance to watch the European version of Dawn of the Dead, it's worth watching. But regardless, Claudio Simonetti was the member of Goblin who Argento originally reached out to for this soundtrack. He wanted the kind of sound that Goblin had provided for him before on films like Suspiria, great soundtrack for that they did. Yeah. One of the best, frankly. If we hadn't talked about that before, I might have done that
right.
film. And Progressi Rossi, which American fans know as Deep Red, another Giallo film that they did the soundtrack for. So, Goblin had broken up a couple years before this, and so Simonetti, though, kind of got the band back together, so to speak, other than the drummer. So it's not officially Goblin, but basically it's the rest of the members working on this. Simonetti, by the way, had gone into a completely different direction with his music, with like dance, disco style music. But he kind of went more back into the Goblin phase of kind of a combination of disco and rock sort of type of sound. And the soundtrack for this is, like we've mentioned before with some of the other movies, like another character in the film. And that's particularly evident in these Giallo films because one of the things about Italian genre cinema from this era is that they don't care that much about like having a tight plot. Set pieces. Most of these films are like a series of set pieces, and the look and the sound and the feel of it are the most important thing. And so that's why the music is so important and what comes through in this film. Mm-hmm. So some examples of this, the very and there are different motifs of sound that I'm going to call them Goblin, even though they're not technically that in this film, but that they do in this film that work really well. There's one classic scene where this woman, and this starts out in classic Giallo fashion. What happens at the beginning of the scene has nothing to do with the film, which is that this woman pisses off a dog who starts barking at her and then jumps over the fence and happens, unfortunately for her, to chase her into the yard. Now she's in the house. She discovers pictures of the murderer who has saved pictures of their killing, and so she has to escape the house. She escapes, but then the dog ends up catching her after she escapes the house. It's this whole kind of weird thing. Now the music is important in this scene because it's almost like it takes on a music video sort of.
Yeah. Yeah, and kind of like what you're saying earlier about Marvel movies being very dictative of what you're supposed to be thinking and feeling.
Yes.
I feel like the Giallo films, and this one in particular, is more informative, especially to an American audience. It's a kind of a cultural thing. It's like the universal language of music. It's not telling you what to feel, but it definitely kind of communicates some things that may be lost on us through dialogue or through cultural understanding. So I get what you're saying with that.
Yeah. So it has and that scene in particular has a very music video of that era sort of feel to it. And it really works well, even though if the audience is thinking too hard about the plot and what does this woman have to do? Like, she's just some woman that kind of wanders into the scene, and what does the dog have to do?
It's your typical Giallo type shit.
Yeah, exactly. But the music, though, plays a role in you buying into it, kind of sliding into that kind of vibe without questioning it too
Well,
much.
yeah, and this was the one, because it's the author who is seeing his work essentially brought to life.
Yes.
It's almost like a weird fucked up mystery.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the music really does kind of play into that.
Oh,
They
yeah,
lean into
for
it
sure.
heavily.
And, we see that. Now, I think this scene happened a little bit earlier, but this is something where we kind of get the twist in the film, which is where there's an initial murder that's by one particular person, but then this other bystander wanders into a scene where through this big plate glass window, which this is another thing about, if we're talking about the visuals that Argento does, these big scenes with big windows that you can see in very clearly that murderers don't seem to worry about. The bird with the crystal plumage is another example of a movie where it's just this big window where you can see the murder happening. So there actually is a different murderer than who ends up being the main killer, which is the interesting kind of fun twist with this one. And in that scene, again, the goblin music has this pulsing rhythm to it that absent that pulsing rhythm, it's a different scene.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You could play that scene with more kind of like creepy, sort of understated music, and it would be something totally different that maybe doesn't work as well.
That's what I was trying to say with like the informative nature of that soundtrack. It really kind of guides you into the mood, which is so critical in this kind of movie.
And then the other type of scene, so I kind of wanted to highlight three particular scenes, the first two I mentioned, but then there's another sound that they do, which are the scenes where we get the clues about who the killer is, which is where there are these flashbacks that are kind of weird that get interspersed throughout the movie, but then they kind of come together at the end, where we see this woman on a beach, and it looks like she's like flirting with these guys to gangbang basically. And then someone who we don't know, we have the point of view killer thing where he's pissed off and ends up killing her in the initial scene. The music in those scenes has this kind of psychotic nursery rhyme vibe to it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That is really unsettling and works really well for it. And doesn't work as well without it. That's the best way I could put it. Just a psychotic nursery rhyme.
Well, it's kind of like what we were talking about
like with chinkly little sounds.
It's like a little toy box, but he's actually
that's a good way.
he's modulating like the pitch of the toy, so it's like a little out of tune. And if you take anything that's take any child's instrument and make it a touch out of tune, and it's horrifying, instantly horrifying.
Yep,
that's all it takes.
Exactly. And so that gives us an insight not only that becomes prescient at the end of the film, but also it makes sense what the age of the character is when the scene happens, because we have no other clues otherwise.
Yeah.
It's just this random, like, what the hell's going on here? The music lets us know that, oh, this is like a kid's thing, but it's off kilter somehow. Yeah. So in any case, those three scenes in particular are the motif, or like the three big motifs in the film where the music become particularly important and are crucial to the plot. Now the ending is kind of crazy too, and has that similar kind of pulsing beat where and they do the thing that horror movies often do, where you think the movie's over, and then all of a sudden it's not, and the movie kicks in that one final time in a way that really kind of gets you and stabs you, as it were, without giving away too much. But,
I use that term a lot. It's that stabbing music.
Stabbing music.
But really, though, seriously, that kind of the way in which the synth sound comes in does have it's like a stabbing sound, like it's
One thing I've discovered this week is watching these movies with the intent of discussing the music makes it a completely different experience watching them film. Because a lot of times you passively accept the music, and which I'm sure it's different for you, Brandon, because you exist in that industry. But for us, it's like you can just let it wash over you and just kind of passively, subconsciously guide you. But when you are actively listening, Well, it really changes the whole thing because that becomes a character, it becomes a dialogue, it becomes a theme, and it really does influence what you, the viewer, are supposed to be thinking and anticipating or not anticipating.
Yep.
So, good stuff. And again, back to what you're saying about Goblin and their partnership with Dario Argento.
Yeah.
Just a really one of those two things are like intertwined in my mind. You know, they're always together.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't think of Suspiria. You can't. I mean, those classic films from that era, Deep Red, without kind of associating with the music.
Yeah.
That pulsing,
All right.
synth music.
Well, I'm gonna bring it home with a more not modern, but it's 2011, comparatively modern film. It's Drive.
Love this movie.
Directed by Nicholas Winding Refn. Is that even how you say it?
I thought it was Wyndon. I didn't know that.
The music is by Cliff Martinez. It stars Ryan Gosling, Carey Mulligan, Albert Brooks. Albert Brooks is so good in this movie.
He's so good.
Did he win, or he was nominated for an Oscar at least for this?
Oscar Isaac, Christina Hendricks, Ron Perlman, Bryan Cranston. I mean,
great cast.
The cast is incredible.
Yeah.
And it has to be.
Yeah.
For this movie.
And this is kind of the bookend of the episode because there's so much spiritual connective tissue between this and Thief. In the neon-drenched streets of Los Angeles, a nameless Hollywood stuntman moonlights as a cold, meticulously professional getaway driver. His strictly disciplined life, defined by a 5-minute window, that's his rule, is disrupted when he develops a quiet, protective bond with his neighbor, Irene, and her young son. When Irene's husband is released from prison and is forced into a botched pawn shop heist to pay off a protection debt.
Oscar Isaac, by the way.
Yep. The driver steps in to help, only to find himself the target of a brutal mob betrayal. Forced to abandon his stoic detachment, he unleashes a hidden savage violence to protect Irene, navigating a stylized world of high-speed chases and bloody vengeance. Okay. So, in regards to the score and the atmosphere, you've got the humidity of Los Angeles. Thief kind of sounded like a cold, industrial drilling sound. Cliff Martinez's score for Thief, it feels more like this humidity, this languid humidity. He creates a thick, seductive atmosphere that pulses with this sinister undercurrent mirroring Driver's own suppressed emotions. There's so much just low tone, almost non-music music in this movie.
Yes.
And then it kind of hits when the action hits. It's really
like kind of bubbling like right at the threshold of perception too.
It is.
Yeah. There are times when I'm watching the movie and I'm listening so freaking hard to say, is that music or is that like the drone of an engine? And it's kind of this. It's good. Cliff Martinez, and you should look at his movie credits. I mean, the guy's musical stylings are like all over the map. I mean, he's done everything. Okay. But he uses synth pads and repetitive echoing sequencer patterns. There's that 10-minute opening in Thief that we talked about earlier. The music in Drive acts as the primary storyteller, building tension through rhythm rather than orchestral swells. There are also a couple of very key needle drops of songs as well that almost just beautifully mesh with the score. Like you think you're hearing just score, type music, and then suddenly you're like somebody singing, and you're like, oh shit, this is a track. This is a pop artist. This is so
the real human being thing.
Yeah, specifically that you've got that song as well as the Bichette brothers. They did their track as well. Thief, we mentioned it was kind of like a modern neo-noir. This is almost like a retro neo-noir. This is that backwards looking into like the 80s, the early 80s, and that whole just
he's got that
Michael
Scorpion
Mann world
jacket, that badass.
Silver.
Iconic.
Oh my! And as soon as I saw that, I thought, "Oh, I'm going to relate to this.
Yeah.
I'm going to connect."
But much like Thief, though, Driver is that silent protagonist. He doesn't say a whole heck of a lot.
Yep.
But so when he does speak, it carries a lot of gravity.
Yes.
And it had a lot of meaning. So we mentioned the needle drops. There's that film. There's a song called "Night Call" by Konvinsky.
Yeah.
It's the vocodered robotic male voice that kind of represents Driver's voice. And then you mentioned the real human being.
Yeah.
It's a female vocal, and it kind of speaks to his soft spot that he feels for Irene.
Right.
So that vulnerable side of this stoic character. So really smartly done, tracks that are not, in the orchestral score.
So good.
Well, and think about too. There was what, and the music is adjusted on the fly too, because the scene where he's got the mask on after he's caused the Ron Perlman character to wreck, and that scene is like a slasher where he's walking
It's
down
horrifying.
the beach with the mask on and drowns him in the sea, and and the way the music swirls in that particular.
He walks up. There's one scene where he walks up. They're all sitting in a room like playing cards, and he has that plastic mask on. He walks up to the little glass thing and just stares in at them.
Yes.
And it is so perfectly timed. It's so slow paced, and you see that inhuman flesh walk up and stare in at them, and then it cuts away.
And I think
that's genius.
I think another thing that the music does extremely well is it kind of paints this picture of Ryan Gosling's character as being stoic, being meticulous, being calculated. So when he has his flashes of violence, they seem more violent.
Oh yeah,
because
100%.
he stomps that guy's face in the elevator.
He's in the elevator.
Yeah.
One of the best scenes in any film. I
it's-
absolutely love it.
I mean,
it's
there's
so
romance
good.
because he like slow motion gives her a smooch, and then
Oh, like I still mimic that move when I'm in the elevator with I'll put my hand over and push her to the back. I'm like, I'm going to take this guy down if things go south here. You just wait.
yeah.
If I had a hammer, it'd get ugly.
yes.
I've got some trivia about this, so hopefully Travis will listen to this episode, since Travis always brings the trivia to our episodes. So the recurring theme, "A Real Hero," was inspired by Captain Chelsea Sully Sullenberger's emergency landing on the Hudson River. The lyric "A Real Human Being" was a direct quote from the songwriter's grandfather describing Sully to her.
Huh.
Really?
That's so weird.
Random and weird,
I
right?
did not know that.
While Thief influences is massive in this film, director Nicholas Winding Refn also cited Giorgio Moroder's score for American Gigolo as a primary inspiration for the film's, quote, pink and blue sonic palette.
Yeah. Pink and blue.
Pink and blue, yeah. An interesting way to put it.
That's a description.
Much like Thief was misunderstood by critics in 1981, Drive famously faced a lawsuit from a moviegoer who sued because the trailer misled her into thinking it would be a high-octane action film like The Fast and the Furious rather than a slow-burn synth noir.
Wonder how that lawsuit came out.
I'm sure it went great. I'm sure that judge looked at her like, what the fuck are you doing in my court? Oh, let's see.
God,
And I did find a very brief interview with him about Tenebrae.
Oh, yeah?
He talked about the influence of Tenebrae and Argento in general.
Really?
On his film, yeah.
Oh, cool.
And so he was, so
It's
that
all
was
tying together.
Yep.
Cliff Martinez was hired just 5 weeks before the film's premiere. He worked so quickly and efficiently that he managed to blend his ambient electronic score seamlessly with the pre-selected synth pop songs, creating a unified sound that birthed the 2010 synthwave revival. I didn't know that. That's so cool that they had already picked those two tracks specifically, and then he was able to just work around it and just.
I do know that's how it always works.
Yeah.
You always have a temp track before anyone says, "Hey, write this." Mm-hmm. And so there is a certain level to which, and it's different for every, but 90% of the time, the directors have a temp track, and you get locked into, which is why that closing song sound in Thief sounds like
Comfortably
Numb, because that's what the director put there as a guide, and so that he's like, well, once you have it locked in your brain, you can't get out of it, so you end up just having someone rewrite the obvious.
I want to think more about this woman who sued, because can you imagine being that pissed off at a movie that you're going to sue for false representation?
Interestingly enough, her name was Karen.
If there's sufficient grounds there, I need to rethink my approach to financial gain.
We need a documentary about that. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I
if
wanna know the
that
story.
could provide a way to instant riches, then
I'm sure
'Cause
she's
movies piss me off all the time.
I'm sure she's a peach of a human being, and you'd probably want to know her personally.
Yeah.
We should make sure our documentary is like poorly advertised, so it becomes very meta. So someone sues us for misrepresenting our documentary
There you go. There
you
as
go.
a
Yeah.
star-studded, tour de force, when it's actually just us bitching about this woman who filed a suit. Ironically,
All right, that's going to do it for Synth Soundtracks Part 1. Should we do it again
I
some
think
other
we
time?
should-
Oh yeah, we can talk about It Follows.
Yeah, there's so many soundtracks.
You know,
I was
I was
so
going to say
tempted-
we should do another one with Tangerine Dream. One of my favorites is Popol Vuh, who does a lot of the Werner Herzog films.
Yeah.
And
I wanted to bring John Carpenter on. I just couldn't settle
yeah.
on a
Well,
movie.
Carpenter was a
Yeah.
notable absence.
Yeah.
I
I went
mean,
back and-
because Carpenter is the ultimate auteur.
Yeah,
Because he doesn't just write and direct; he
Just
does the
DIY,
music and
yeah,
everything.
totally.
Yeah.
So we might revisit this at a later date, but I want to thank Brandon specifically for joining us. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Making time in your schedule to come hang out with us and do the Chop Shop thing.
Yeah.
And now you're part of the fold.
That's right.
Gentlemen, thank you for your diligence and preparation. And we will be back in a couple of episodes. We're going to do That Aged Great, films that have aged poorly in retrospect. It's going to be fun and entertaining, I promise. Please rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends about us. We are Cinema Chop Shop on social media. We're Cinema Chop Shop Podcast on YouTube and on Blue Sky. So check us out there. Be kind to one another. Love your friends. Love your neighbors. Tell them that you love them. And do kind things for total strangers, because we need it now more than ever. And in the meantime, please remember to watch, chop, retrofit. Thank you very much.